I'd like to welcome everybody to the 364th meeting of the BRTB. This meeting is being recorded. If anyone online should experience any difficulties during the meeting, please send a message in the chat box. I'll ask that our BRTB members turn on their cameras during roll call for attendance as well as for voting. I ask Miss Rebecca Dybel to start the roll call to determine member participation.
Good morning. Annapolis,
Present.
Anne Arundel County,
Present.
Baltimore City,
Present.
Baltimore County,
Present.
Carroll County,
Present.
Harford County,
Here.
Howard County,
Here.
Queen Anne's County,
Here.
MDOT. Is there anyone from MDOT here today?
Yeah, here.
Okay, thank you. RTA of Central Maryland, MDOT MTA, Maryland Department of Environment.
MTA is present. I was just having unmuting problems.
No, okay, no worries, thanks. Maryland Department of Environment,
Here.
Maryland Department of Planning.
Good morning. Here, Bi Hui Shi.
Good morning. FHWA,
Present.
thank you so much.
All right, our first item is to approve the minutes from the April BRTB meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Queen Anne's County will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Annapolis seconds that motion.
All right, so now that we got a second from Queen Anne's County and Annapolis making the motion, could everybody indicate either a yay or nay?
Yay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rebecca, could you do a roll call, please?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Hi, sorry, my mute button was stuck. Did you want me to do the roll call then?
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. Annapolis,
Yay.
Anne Arundel County,
Yay.
Baltimore City,
Yay.
Baltimore County,
Yay.
Carroll County,
Yay.
Harford County,
Yay.
Howard County,
Yay.
Queen Anne's County,
Yay.
MDOT MTA, and RTA of Central Maryland. Did I miss anybody? Thank you.
Good. The minutes are approved. We can move along to our second portion is our public participation opportunity, where we offer the public a chance to speak to the board. If anyone has comments on any of the action items, please wait for that item to be discussed. If there's anyone who wishes to address the board at this time, please indicate it in the chat box.
Mr. Chair, there is no one who requested to speak prior to the meeting. And I'm checking the chat box right now. And currently there is no member of the public requesting to address the board through the chat box. So I think we can move on.
Very good. We now ask for the report on the public involvement activity from Monica.
Hello, good morning. Todd, do you have a copy of the report to pull up? There we go.
Monica, we might be having a mute issue. We can't hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I got muted again. We have a number of current opportunities for folks to get involved. We're really excited about the launch of the Bikeable Baltimore Region project that launched last week. And we're really excited because we're working to create a bike network for the entire region that connects, has a safe and comfortable connection for everyone, connecting folks to jobs and schools and parks and all kinds of things. And so what we're looking for is folks to join us at one of our public meetings. We're going to be having, I think, 8 in-person public meetings around the region and 2 virtually. Those are going to be held from June 3rd to June 27th. We're going to be accepting online comments, though, through July 26th. So there's a long opportunity for you to be engaged and learn more and to share your thoughts about a regional bike network. And that is available at publicinput.com/bike Balto region. And you can get involved there and join the mailing list or take our survey. We also have released a $4.5 billion transportation improvement program for the entire region. And this transportation plan covers the next 4 years, and we're curious to know what you think about it. We have 162 different projects, including bicycle, transit, bridge, highway, pedestrian, and freight projects. We also have an air quality assessment about the plan, and we want to make it as easy as possible for folks to learn about the plans and the projects. So we have an interactive story map where folks can see the projects on a map and click to get more information. You can also download a detailed project list and take our survey or share your thoughts on our project website, and that's available at publicinput.com/BRTB-tip. And those comments are welcome through the end of June. I believe it's through the end of June. I don't have it here, but we're also going to be holding 2 virtual meetings on June 10th, one at noon and one 6:30 p.m. So we'd love to have you join us for that to learn more or share your thoughts. The third opportunity to get involved is the PRG Stony Run Phase 2. In January, we launched the design process for this Stony Run Trail, which is a part of the Patapsco Regional Greenway that's being developed. And we asked for community input on what they were looking for in the design of a trail and suggestions for making the trail beneficial for everyone. And so now we've identified 4 different options for where the trail should go, and we're looking for public feedback on that. So comments are welcome on that through June 5th, and you can visit publicinput.com/PRG to get involved. We recently had Bike to Work Week, which was a success. We had over 20 events at 40 different locations around the region. We're really excited about that. And if you missed the fun, no worries. You can visit biketoworkmd.com to sign up for our mailing list and find out about other bike events and how to be involved. And we wanted to just wrap up and give you a report. We had a comment period that closed recently related to what's called the federal certification process, where the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration come visit the BRTB and evaluate how we're doing in terms of outreach and meeting our planning requirements and that sort of thing. We did some work around making plain language around this process, so it would make it easier for folks to understand. We did a large, widespread social media campaign as well as emails. And through that, we were able to make over 45,000 impressions or connections with folks, and which was really very exciting. And of those folks, we had 650 people visit the site, which allowed us to meet our goals for this year. And we had double the number of participants from last certification. So we had 40 folks participate this time. So that was great for us to know that we encourage more folks to participate and be involved. And some of the survey highlights were, a lot of folks, 74% thought the BRTB has enough opportunity to comment. So we do have a little bit of room for improvement there. And 68% felt encouraged to participate regardless of the age, income, race, or ability. So those are good numbers, but also some room for improvement. So we're thinking about those. And highlights of the feedback were to continue to grow our community engagement, improve transparency. There's a call for increasing more meaningful incorporation of comments. And a lot of folks were appreciative of the support for local areas and in the work that we're doing. Recommendations for additional outreach to the public to educate them on the process and how they can be involved. And consider greater investment in transit, focusing on ADA accessibility, bridge inspections, and better stormwater control. Those are some highlights, and you can visit the project website to learn more at publicinput.com/BRTB certification. And we expect a report from Federal Highway and FTA in June. And once that happens, we'll post, I believe we'll post a report on the project website, and we'll share out information with the public. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Now we ask for a technical report from Dan Jesnick. Please present your report.
Thank you, Tony. This is Dan. Yeah, just a quick technical committee report. Committee reviewed and recommended one action item for the BRTB on May 7th. The staff introduced resolution 24-3. That's for MDOT/MTA's request to add one project, the Penn Camden connector, long-awaited project. The project was described and approved to move forward by the technical committee to the board today for a vote. The nominating committee was formed at the request of the chair. Carroll County and Hartford County was asked to develop a slate of officers for FY 2025. The slate of officers will be presented in June at the technical committee meeting with elections in July. Ms. Monica Haynes Benketta discussed the federal certification review, as we just heard today as well, Bike to Work Week and the upcoming Bikeable Baltimore Region project, and the 2025 tip and air quality conformity, which the board will be approving later this summer. There was a discussion about the Transportation Planning Institute that AMPO is standing up. The representatives on the BRTB and the tech committee, as well as the BMC staff, will be able to participate in on-demand classes once the platform is launched in a few months. And there's a plan to periodically add new content to the platform to keep current. Staff also distributed class lists offered by the National Highway Institute and the National Transit Institute. Both have a mix of in-person, virtual, instructor-led, and on-demand classes. And there's a description of the content and if these classes are offered for free. I think more information will be coming out to the members on that. A closed session followed the business meeting to discuss 3 upcoming RFPs for BMC. These included the Section Reach Greenway segment, one extending to Cherry Hill, then a safety messaging and outreach campaign associated with Signal Woman, and then a long-range transportation plan scenario planning to prepare for uncertainty in the context of multiple possible future scenarios for our long-range plan. And that's the technical committee report from May 7th. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Dan. Now we'll move on to our interagency consultation group by Ms. Marshall. Please present your report.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you. So for ICG, we met virtually this month on May 15th. And the modeling results of the regional emissions analysis were approved. The results show that the region is measuring below the approved emission budgets for both NOx emissions and VOC emissions for all 5 horizon years up to 2050. And this is excellent news for our region as we are demonstrating attainment of the national ozone standard. The air quality conformity results and the draft conformity documents are all available for public review, along with the tip at the public input website that Monica mentioned earlier, and that's open for public review until June 17th. We also walked through a total of 5 tip amendments. 2 of them will be presented here today for approval, and the other 3 are amendments that will be presented in June. ICG approved all of them to be exempt from air quality conformity analysis. And the next time that we will be meeting will be the July 2nd in-person meeting, which is joint meeting with the technical committee. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Now we'll move to action items. I'd ask Todd to please introduce the first action item.
Good morning. Today, the BRTB is being asked to consider Resolution 24-23 to consider a request from the Maryland Department of Transportation MTA to add a CRISI grant awarded to complete the Penn Camden connector to the fiscal year 2024 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program. I'm going to ask Mr. Keith Kucharik to introduce the resolution. Keith?
Thank you, Todd, and good morning, everybody. As Todd mentioned, in Resolution 24-23, MDOT MTA is requesting to add 1 project to the FY 24 to 27 tip. The Penn Camden connector will add $11 million in consolidated rail infrastructure and safety improvements, or CRISI funds. This amendment, as Anna mentioned, was presented to the ICG and on its May 15th meeting, and it has been determined that this project is exempt according to the conformity rule. And as Dan mentioned, this amendment was presented to the technical committee on May 7th and was recommended to be presented to the BRTB. So at this time, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Jamie Richardson from MTA to present the details of the project. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Jamie Richardson from MTA, and I'll present about the Penn Camden connector and adding it to the tip. So I'll just go over the background, apportionment schedule, and benefits of the project. Next slide. So this project was awarded through a CRISI grant, and the amendment to the tip would add $11 million in engineering funding to the project. The total estimated cost of the project is $232.9 million. But right now we have the $11 million for engineering. Next slide. This project would provide a connection track between the Northeast Corridor and then the CSX owned Mark Camden line. So it utilizes existing railroad right-of-way north of BWI. So this would allow Penn Station trains to access the storage and maintenance yards at the Riverside Yard. So Mark would be able to efficiently bring its locomotives to Riverside and reduce the needed train storage at Amtrak's Penn Station. Next slide. So for the apportionment, again, it adds $11 million in FY25 for CRISI funding. And this increased funding is $8.8 million federal and then a $2.2 million of matching state funds. Our schedule, so we were awarded the grant last fall, kicking off the project this spring, and then hope to accomplish 30% design in the fall of 2025. And the team is looking for additional funding opportunities for design and construction of the project. And that's all I got. And here's my contact information if there are any questions. Thank you.
With that, Mr. Chair, we do ask the BRTB to consider resolution 24-23 for approval.
Great. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Jamie. Now we ask for a member to move for approval of the resolution and a second.
Members need motions to approve resolution.
Baltimore City seconds.
Great. Now, does any member have any questions or comments on the resolution? And we ask if any member of the public have any questions or comments on the resolution. And for those online, please indicate so in the chat box. Todd, has any member of the public signed up to speak?
Mr. Chair, no one signed up to speak prior to the meeting, and checking the chat box, there is currently no member of the public requesting to speak on this resolution.
Okay. Again, with your cameras on, Rebecca, I ask you to please read everyone's name and everyone to indicate aye or nay.
Okay, Annapolis,
Aye.
Anne Arundel County,
Aye.
Baltimore City,
Aye.
Baltimore County,
Aye.
Carroll County,
Aye.
Hartford County,
Aye.
Howard County,
Aye.
Queen Anne's County,
Aye.
MDOT, and
Aye.
RTA. I'm sorry, was that MDOT?
Yes. Aye.
Okay, thank you so much. RTA of Central Maryland. Thanks, everyone.
With that, the resolution passes, and I ask Todd to please introduce the next item, please.
Today, the BRTB is being asked to consider resolution 24-24 to approve a request from the MDTA to add funding in fiscal year 2024 for the planning phase of the Francis Scott Key Bridge reconstruction project. I am again going to ask Mr. Keith Gachar to introduce the resolution. Keith?
Great, thank you again, Todd. As Todd mentioned in resolution 24-24, MDTA is requesting to add one project to the 24-27 tip. The Francis Scott Key Bridge reconstruction project will initially add $100,000 in state funds to FY24 for planning. Additional funding is anticipated to be included in the final FY25 to 28 tip. This amendment was presented to the technical committee through an email review, and it was recommended to be sent to the BRTB as presented. Additionally, this project was reviewed by the ICG at its May 15th meeting. And since this is planning only, it was recommended to be exempt according to the conformity rule. And I'm going to turn it over to Carl Chamberlain from MDTA to present the details of this project. Carl?
Hey, everybody. My name is Carl Chamberlain. I'm the Deputy Director of the Division of Planning and Program Development at MDTA. I'm here to give a project overview for the Francis Scott Key Bridge rebuild. There's a couple of things that I just want to make sure I emphasize before I get into the presentation. A couple of themes I'll return to as I go through. First, this project is fluid, and at this point, I don't have a lot of details to share. Of course, this is a feature of the project, not a bug. Obviously, we're in an unprecedented situation with this project. In addition, we have selected a procurement method, progressive design build, which allows us to get started as quickly as possible, while allowing for flexibility in design and construction. And certainly, as we know more about the project, we will be providing updates to our stakeholders as needed. One other point I want to make up front, you'll notice we've not programmed all the money in this current amendment. But in order for us to get certain federal approvals, such as NEPA, the project needs to be in the tip. And in addition, and this is the theme of the project, we don't yet know enough information about the federal contributions to comfortably include that information in this amendment. And since the tip is fiscally constrained, we need more of that information before we include that. As such, we're only including the current project planning that we're confident about, and we plan to update the sheet and the draft tip that's going for vote in July. And of course, we'll continue to update the tip as we learn new information about the future costs of the project. All right, move on. Next slide. So this is self-explanatory, but everyone will likely be aware that a cargo ship leaving the Port of Baltimore struck the Key Bridge, leading to its collapse. And the other note here is just that the bridge was open to traffic in March of 1977, which made it just about 47 years old when it collapsed. Next slide. Okay, so before I discuss information on this slide, I just want to make it clear that the tip sheet amendment only accounts for the last bullet on this slide, which is the rebuilding of the Key Bridge. The remaining information I'll go over just as a matter of project context and overview. So, project intent is to clear the Fort McHenry Channel and fully reopen marine vessel traffic to the Port of Baltimore, remove unstable and dangerous debris from the river, remove remaining debris to prepare for the bridge rebuild, and then of course to rebuild the Key Bridge. And just as a reminder, the information in this tip sheet and future information is going to be focused on rebuilding and the information related to the rebuild. Project goals: to restore the functionality and transportation connectivity, revitalize the surrounding area, stimulate economic activity, attract investment, and breathe new life in the communities that are impacted by the Key Bridge. Next slide. So we are on slide 5. So this is probably the information people are most interested about the bridge. But again, I just want to reiterate that due to the unprecedented nature of the project, we know some information about the project, but certainly don't have the same level of detail you might expect at some of these presentations. But the information I'm able to provide you is what we are confidently able to state about the project right now. And of course, we'll continue to update our stakeholders as we learn more. So here are the parameters of the bridge. The new Key Bridge will be higher to accommodate taller ships entering the port, be constructed in the same location on approximately the same alignment, stay primarily within the state's existing right-of-way. It'll include 4 lanes, 2 in each direction, including inside and outside shoulders. And as you can imagine, it'll include larger pier protection in the water. Next slide, please. Couple of quick things for timeline. As you can imagine, when the bridge fell, right away we started in April initiating regular agency coordination. We were doing daily coordination. That's sort of gone down to weekly at this point, but we are in close contact with all of our sort of permitting and agency partners on this project, and we'll continue to do so as we move forward. We expect to get, or it was publicly announced that they expect to restore the use of the federal channel by May of 2024. I don't have a current update on that. I was on vacation last week, but they've been doing a really good job posting that information online. And so if you're interested in more details about the current status of the channel, again, you can check out the website for that. In June of 2024, you can kind of see how quickly things are going to be moving on this project. We expect U.S. Coast Guard clearance determination. In July, we expect NEPA approvals, anticipated to be a category exclusion. This is why we're submitting the amendment for the project now, rather than waiting for the July vote on the current draft tip that's out there. The September to December of this year, we expect to get our permits and authorizations for the rebuild. We expect to be demolishing the remaining structure this fall. And then this last one, I would say, the further out you get on this project, sort of the less we know about it. So I would say take this one with the biggest grain of salt. But we expect to begin construction in January 2025. And then just a couple of quick notes on timeline. We expect to hold a virtual public meeting on June 11th for the project. We recognize there's an NEPA requirement to hold a public meeting, but we do want to be sure we're engaging all stakeholders as we progress. We also recognize that the high profile nature of the project, we want to be as transparent as we can throughout. We've also already held a virtual industry forum for the project, and that was to alert the design and construction industry about the procurement methods and upcoming timelines. And as I mentioned, we're holding weekly meetings with permitting agencies and FHWA to track the progress of the project. Next slide. All right, so with that, I will do my best to answer any questions you may have. But again, please keep in mind that there's some amount of detail that I'm not able to provide at this time just because of the nature of the project. But with that, I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
So with that, we now ask the BRTB to consider resolution 24-24 for approval.
Now, once again, we ask one member to approve the resolution and another member to second.
Annapolis approves.
Anne Arundel seconds.
Very good. With that, with Annapolis approving and Anne Arundel with the second, Rebecca, would you please call the vote.
A question, Mr. Chairman. Before we do that,
Yes.
just by way of some discussion, when will the planning phase begin, or has it begun already?
So the planning phase has begun. You might have noticed from the timeline that we expect the NEPA approval to come in July. We had to get NEPA approval for the debris removal activities that was done under programmatic categorical exclusion, and that was approved probably about a month ago. And then we immediately started working on the categorical exclusion for the rebuild. I've already been reviewing drafts internally, and again, we've been working with our partners. We've again already been preparing permitting information, things like that. So yeah, we've been working on it, and we continue to work on we expect the plan to continue over the next, definitely the next fiscal year and as we go along.
Thanks. I noticed that the project goals seem more comprehensive in nature, dealing with things other than transportation, like the economic vitality of areas nearby the bridge. Does the planning grant cover those goals, or is it strictly mobility and rebuild?
Mobility and rebuild. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Do any of the other members have any questions or comments? If not, we ask that any member of the public that has any questions or comments on the resolution to please do so now and indicate their comments within the chat box. Todd, has any member of the public signed up to speak on this resolution?
No member has signed up to speak prior to the meeting, and checking the chat box right now, there is currently no member of the public requesting to speak on this resolution.
Okay, so we'll move along. And again, with your cameras on, when Rebecca reads your name, please indicate aye or nay.
Annapolis,
Aye.
Anne Arundel County,
Aye.
Baltimore City,
Aye.
Baltimore County,
Aye.
Carroll County,
Aye.
Harford County,
Aye.
Howard County,
Aye.
Queen Anne's,
Aye.
MDOT,
Aye.
and RTA Central Maryland. Thanks again.
The resolution is passed. Our next item is a report from the nominating committee. And I ask that Mr. Lang introduce the nominating committee.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members, the Executive Committee appointed Anne Arundel County and the Maryland Department of Transportation as the nominating committee. And today they will be recommending a slate of officers for the BRTB to serve during fiscal year 2025. I turn to Mr. Sam Sneed of the nominating committee to present the slate.
Hello, fellow board members. I'm here to present to you the nominating committee's results. The BRTB nominating committee, consisting of Anne Arundel County and Maryland DOT, met and put forward the slate of Baltimore County as the chair and Howard County as the vice chair to serve a second term as BRTB fiscal year 2025 officers as allowed by the bylaws. Todd?
Thank you. As was previously mentioned, today we are presenting the slate of officers from the nominating committee. During the June meeting, there will be a vote for officers. This will be preceded by a call from the floor in case there's any other members who are interested in running for the positions. But this concludes the presentation of the slate of officers from the nominating committee. Mr. Chair, we can move on to the next item.
Great. Next is our presentation from Maryland's Climate Pollution Reduction Plan. For this item, I also asked Mr. Lang to introduce the speaker.
Certainly. Today we are honored to have a presentation again, as was mentioned, from the Maryland Department of the Environment. Mr. Mark Stewart, the Climate Change Program Manager, is going to present on Maryland's climate pollution reduction plan. I'll turn it over to Mark.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Yep, Mark Stewart. I run the climate change program at MDE. I know several of the people on the call, but not everyone. So it's really nice making your acquaintance for a few minutes this morning as I give an overview of how Maryland intends to achieve its nation-leading goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So thank you for driving the slideshow here. We released in December of last year MDE's final plan to achieve several goals. One is to reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions 60% by 2031 and set the state on a path to achieve net zero emissions by 2045. Those are the state's greenhouse gas emission reduction goals that are set in the statute, and MDE is obligated to develop the plan and implement the plan to achieve those goals. Our plan also has to create net economic benefits for Maryland, which the modeling showed that we achieved. I'll give a quick overview of the plan in these next few slides, but I do invite everyone to check out the full plan at mde.maryland.gov. Next slide. So what we see is that Maryland is already well on track for achieving significant emission reductions. Maryland really leads the nation in historic emission reductions. We had our economy in 2006, which is our baseline year, produced around 120 million tons of CO2 emissions, or the equivalent of CO2 emissions. And already by 2020, we had reduced emissions by about 30%, which is significantly ahead of most other states, including California. California keeps on getting all the credit for being the nation's leader on climate, but we've reduced emissions faster here in Maryland. What you see on the left side is this snapshot of emissions across all of our sectors of the economy and how much they would reduce by just continuing to implement the state's current policies. And what we see is that by 2031, we would achieve about a 51% reduction in emissions, which is on track to achieve the nation goal, the US goal of reducing emissions between 50 and 52% by 2030. But it's not quite enough to achieve Maryland's goal of a 60% reduction by 2031. So what you see on the right side is what our plan presents as the current plus planned policies, layering in some new policies for the state to pursue in order to achieve that net zero emissions goal by 2045 and hopefully achieve the 60% goal by 2031 as well. Next slide. And we really want to point out that Maryland's already come very far, right? We had some of the worst air quality in the eastern half of the United States as recently as 2006. And in 2006, really not too long ago, we had 8 coal-fired power plants producing a significant amount of the emissions, both particulate and CO2 emissions in the state. We have two of those coal power plants left today. Both have announced their plans to retire. Countless cases of respiratory illness and hospitalizations due to poor air quality. And if you go to the next slide, just really want to emphasize that we have come a long way in not that long of a time, right? In 2022, Maryland met all of its national air quality standards for the first time. So we are significantly improving our air quality as we reduce emissions and address climate change. Next slide. The greatest improvements have come from the electricity sector. Here you see the plummeting emissions between 2006 and to up till today, as we've shifted principally from coal to cleaner sources. Maryland generates a lot of power, but we import some power from regional states, so making us a quote unquote net importer of electricity. We import a little bit more than we export. That shift from coal has been shifting to increasingly renewables, solar and wind, but also some new gas power generation. We see that our current policy scenario, which is really bolstered by federal investments, right? The Inflation Reduction Act and BIL, among other federal policies, is really propelling renewable energy and energy storage at the national level. We see that those, plus some of Maryland's existing policies, such as our renewable portfolio standard and our commitment to stay engaged in the regional greenhouse gas initiative, continue to drive emissions down through 2030. But then you see that orange line is current policies. We see that we need additional policies to carry us beyond 2030 into additional emission reductions. What our plan calls for is a new policy to basically enact what Governor Moore has set out as a goal for the state, which is to achieve 100% clean electricity consumption for all Marylanders by 2035. So by the end of this year, the Maryland Energy Administration is called on to produce the policy to achieve the governor's 100% clean electricity goal. Next slide. Where you see a really big shift in focus for MDE as the air regulator for the state is focusing more so on small pieces of fuel burning equipment, right? So we have a long history of regulating power plants and major industrial facilities. What we're pivoting to now is seeing that most of our emissions are coming from small devices, and we're trying to guide the transition economy-wide toward increasingly efficient electric small devices. So car engines, truck engines, furnaces, boilers, water heaters, right? All of this stuff that will need to be electrified in order for Maryland and the nation and the world to achieve its goals. So next slide. What we're doing, of course, is taking advantage of the global transition that's well underway to electrify fossil fuel end uses. So in the United States, we saw that heat pumps started outselling gas furnaces in 2022. Heat pumps have actually long outsold gas furnaces. Heat pumps are by far the most popular new heating system for Marylanders. Last year, we also saw that an EV became the best-selling car in the United States and here in Maryland and actually all around the world. So we've got a significant transition toward electric devices, electric heating devices for our homes, electric cars for our roads, and those things are increasingly powered by clean and renewable energy. Next slide. A major focus of the General Assembly in 2022 when they debated the Climate Solutions Now Act, which is the act that gave us a lot of these goals and called on MDE to develop the state's new climate plan. A lot of the debate then was, can the grid handle all of this new electrification, right? As we electrify cars and trucks and more of our homes and large buildings, can the grid handle it? The Public Service Commission took a couple of years looking at this issue with the support of a consultant named Brattle. And the Brattle study found that, yes, in fact, our grid is well poised for additional electrification, thanks in large part to the Empower Maryland program, which has been reducing electricity consumption in Maryland for nearly 2 decades now. We see that we have significant what's called headroom on the grid. That's room for growth without needing new grid investments, and that the investments that are needed maybe later this decade and into the next decade are really below the historic level of investments that have been made in the grid. So that study concluded that we're well poised for additional electrification of all of our devices in our economy. Next slide. We see that transportation electrification, or I'm sorry, transportation decarbonization is largely driven by electrification as well. MDE has adopted the Advanced Clean Cars 2 and Advanced Clean Truck rules to guide the transition toward electric and zero emissions light duty, medium duty, and heavy duty vehicles. We are also partnering with MDOT in the development of the climate plan to look at strategies to further reduce vehicle miles traveled statewide. So there's some significant VMT reduction that's called for in the plan, Our plan, the MDE plan, is really complemented nicely by MDOT's climate pollution reduction plan, which if you were to go to our website, you could find MDOT's climate pollution reduction plan as an appendix to the MDE plan. Next slide. We already have a fairly robust EV charging network across the state. It's poised for additional growth, right? There's significant federal investment, state and private investment going into this right now. Next slide. We also see that buildings are really, that building decarbonization is being driven by electrification. So one of our regulations that we're getting close to being able to adopt here is called Building Energy Performance Standards. The Climate Solutions Now Act in 2022 required that large buildings in the state, these are buildings that are 35,000 square feet or larger, will achieve zero direct emissions by 2040. We have a regulation that's coming out now to guide that transition. But we see that we need additional new policies in this space. Buildings are fairly stubborn to decarbonize, largely because if you have let's say a furnace at home, right, or a gas water heater, and either of those devices were to fail, the typical thing that you do is you call a contractor and you say, hey, you know, my heat's not working, and they come out and they do what we call an in-kind replacement. In other words, if you had a furnace, they're almost certainly going to install a new furnace, right? So we continue to lock in fossil fuel use in the buildings. So we are developing new policies and incentives, focusing heavily on incentives to make it even easier for the installer to be able to offer you some significant incentives to, when that AC equipment or heat or furnace or water heater fails, that the most affordable option upfront and long term is to install a heat pump at that time of failure. So we have some new policies called zero emission heating equipment standards and clean heat standards to guide that transition and make it easier for installers and building owners to electrify their buildings. Next slide. We see that all of this investment in electrification creates local jobs, right? I mean, you can't have someone replace your furnace with a heat pump without that being a local contractor to do it. We see that our plan creates an additional 27,000 jobs in Maryland between now and 2031. We see significant growth for electricians and heat pump installers among the job sectors that will benefit from these investments. Next slide. Implementing the plan lowers energy costs. Today, a household like mine that uses heat pumps and drives EVs saves at least $2,600 annually. Savings increased significantly to about $4,000 annually for households that switch from oil or propane heat to heat pumps. Excuse me. So some significant household energy savings on an annual basis. Next slide. The federal government is offering a lot of support to help people do all this stuff, right? There's a 30% tax credit on just about all clean energy investments, be it getting a home energy audit or installing those heat pumps and other zero emission devices, installing solar panels and adding insulation to your homes, right? 30% tax credit on just about everything. We, of course, also have up to $7,500 from the federal government to help you buy new EVs. Here in Maryland, starting July 1st, when that fund is renewed, we also have $3,000 toward helping you purchase a new electric vehicle. So that's $10,500 off of the MSRP on a new EV here in Maryland. Next slide. We also starting, this slide says starting in 2024. This is actually probably now early 2025. The Maryland Energy Administration will be rolling out electrification rebates, excuse me, that are funded with federal funds. These are to help low, moderate, and middle income households, providing up to $8,000 upfront rebates for a new heat pump, $4,000 for a new electric panel upgrade if needed for that electrification project, so on and so forth. So some significant support funded through the Inflation Reduction Act. We expect that there's going to be great demand for these rebates, and that the federal funding that Maryland is receiving, which is something like $137 million that Maryland's receiving for this program, that will probably run out fairly quickly. So what our plan proposes to do is to keep these rebates flowing once the federal funding runs out. Next slide. To do that, we're looking at a number of potential funding sources. So the plan kind of floats different funding ideas, some of which we're actively pursuing, right? Like federal grants and loans. But we're looking at the plan proposed a number of other things for the General Assembly and the government writ large to consider, including issuing revenue bonds to sort of front load some of the investment that could be repaid over time, expanding Maryland's successful cap and invest program. We currently have what's called cap and invest for our power plants. There's a model out there that other states are using to expand that program into other sectors of the economy. Some states are looking at carbon fees or carbon taxes. There actually isn't any state that has that enacted yet. Excuse me. Hazardous substance fees, fees on fossil fuel vehicles. These are some of the different concepts that were floated in the climate plan, and it's largely up to the General Assembly and the governor's office to decide kind of which, if any of these, is the right fit for Maryland, or if there's another funding tool. But the plan does propose putting an additional $1 billion a year toward these climate investments to help households and building owners and drivers save money. Next slide. With the new funding sources established, the state will be able to provide at least $1 billion annually to incentivize additional building electrification, transitioning to electric vehicles, industrial decarbonization, workforce development, and much more. Next slide. In addition to lowering household energy costs and creating 27,000 jobs, we also see that the modeling shows implementing the plan would increase personal income statewide by $2.5 billion and grow Maryland's gross domestic product by about $5.3 billion between now and 2031. Next slide. The health benefits that are generated are largely concentrated in our areas that would see the greatest emission reduction. So, of course, not surprising, especially to you all, we have a concentration of emissions where we tend to have more economic activity, more driving, interstate travel. So as we implement additional policies to drive down emissions from typical heating equipment and vehicles principally, we see most of the health benefits accruing in the communities that are most greatly affected by that, with total savings adding up to about up to $321 million in health benefits in 2031 alone. Next slide. And of course, why are we doing all of this? Presumably the General Assembly gave Maryland big goals to address climate change because of our concern about the global impact of climate change, not just the local. So when we scale up to the global scale, we see that Maryland's additional efforts called for in the plan generate an additional $135 billion in global benefit to the public health of the planet as we implement this climate plan. Next slide. So our next steps, we are across the state agencies, we're working to maximize the federal funding opportunities. We're launching and implementing new regulatory processes. My team is in the midst of writing the zero emission heating equipment standards and clean heat standards right now. We're coordinating closely with the Maryland Commission on Climate Change to look at those new funding mechanisms. There was actually just a meeting last week looking at economy-wide cap and invest strategies that other states are using, and continuing at MDE and through the Climate Commission to evaluate those funding mechanisms. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments, and thank you for your time and attention.
With that, Mr. Chair, there currently is no one requesting to comment or have any questions in the chat box.
Very good. Is there any other business that needs to come before the board?
Right now, Mr. Chair, staff does not have any other business. We would like to thank our presentation from Mark Stewart at MDE, but the next meeting is in June. We have no other business for the board.
Good. Hearing that, I call for a vote to close the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 And with that, we will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.